The afternoon sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Thornton family's sprawling Hamptons estate, casting golden glow across the polished oak floors. The air was thick with the scent of freshly baked vanilla and buttercream, mingling with the salt tang of the Atlantic breeze that drifted through the open French doors. It was the kind of perfect summer day that belonged on postcards. The kind that made you believe the world was a benevolent, generous place. Eleanor Vance did not believe that anymore, not for a single second. She stood in the corner of the grand kitchen, her back pressed against the marble countertop, watching her 4-year-old daughter Lily hover near the pastry table like a moth drawn to a flame. Lily's small hands were clasped behind her back, her tiny shoulders hunched with the effort of restraint, her eyes so like her mother's wide dark and full of questions, were fixed on a single, perfect cup. It was nestled among an array of its siblings on a tiered crystal stand, its swirl of pink frosting glistening like spun sugar, topped with a single edible silver star. Lily had been told in no uncertain terms that she could not have one. Not because there weren't enough, there were dozens, not because she had been bad, she had been an angel all morning, sitting quietly through the tedious gamba, smiling at stranger, curtsying when prompted like a tiny, well-trained doll. Lily could not have a cupcake because the cupcakes were for the children of the donors. As her grandmother, Marga, had so crisply explained earlier, those are for the children with a future, Marga Red had said, her voice a low silken blade, her eyes scanning Eleanor as if she were a piece of furniture that had been left in the wrong room. Your daughter will have to wait, the kitchen has fruit, she can have an apple. Eleanor had felt the words like a physical blow. Future, her daughter, a child with no future. That was how they saw her, that was how they saw all of them. Her little girl, her sister's son, Noah. They were the uninvited guests at the feast of the Thornton legacy, tolerated for appearance's sake, but never, ever allowed to forget their place. She looked at Lily now, at the way her daughter's small, sticky fingers twitched at her sides, at the way her lips pressed together in a determined little line. Lily was trying to be brave, she was trying to be good, she was trying to be invisible, the way her mother had taught her to be in this house, because being invisible was the only way to survive. But Eleanor saw the quiver in her chin, the faint shimmer of unshaped tiaras in those dark, trusting eyes, and something inside her, something she had kept buried under layers of compliance and quiet desperation, began to crack. She pushed herself off the counter and crossed the room, her heels clicking softly on the travertine floor. She knelt beside Lily and placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. Sweet, let's go find a snack in the kitchen, okay? We'll get you some strawberries and cream. Your favorite. Lily shook her head, her small face crumpling. But I want the pink one, mommy. And not. Noah said I could have the star one. He said it was for me. Eleanor's hair twisted. Noah, her sister's son, was a sweet, rasp boy of 7, with a gap-toothed smile and a heart too big for his frail body. He had Down syndrome, and his presence in this house, in this was a constant source of quiet, unspoken embarrassment to the Thorntons. They tolerated him because Eleanor's sister, Amelia, had right into money, but they made it abundantly clear that he was not to be seen, not to be, and definitely not to be given a cupcake with a silver star. Where is No? Eleanor asked, scanning the room. The GANP radio was in full swing outside, a sea of linen suits and pastel dresses, but inside the house was quiet. The caterers were busy in the prep kitchen, and the guests were all on the lawn. She spotted her sister Amelia, by the French doors, her face pinched with anxiety as she tried to engage in polite conversation with a silver-haired woman who kept looking over Amelia's shoulder as if watching for someone more important. I don't know, Lily said, her voice small. He went to find the bathroom. He said he'd be right back. Eleanor felt a prickle of unease. Noah was prone to wandering. He was curious and trusting. And the Thorntons' house was full of rooms he was not supposed to enter. She rose to her feet and made her way through the kitchen toward the main hall, her eyes scanning the corridors. She passed the formal dining room, the library, the study, and then she saw it, the door to the parlor, the one that was always kept closed. With slightly ajar she pushed it open, her heart already sinking, and what she saw made her blood run cold. Noah was standing in the center of the room, his small face lit up with uncomplicated joy. In his hand he held a cupcake, the pink one, the one with the silver star. His fingers were covered in frosting, and he had taken a bite, leaving a smudge of pink on his cheek. He was so happy, so utterly oblivious to the transgression, that it tore at Eleanor's heart. Standing in front of him, her arms crossed, her face a mask of cold fury, was Menret Thornton. She was immaculate in a cream-colored silk suit, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon, her diamonds glittering with the cold, hard light of a woman who had never been denied anything in her life. Behind her, hovering like a vulture, was Eleanor's sister-in-law Claire, a woman who took after her mother in cruelty, but lacked the class to hide it. Margaret said, her voice really above a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a shard of glass. Look at what your sister's monster has done. He has defiled the cake. This was a gift from the Danforth family. It was to be presented to their daughter as a gesture of goodwill, and now it's ruined. Because your sister cannot control her defective child. Eleanor stepped into the room, her legs feeling like lead. He's not a monster, she said, her voice trembling despite her best efforts. He's a child he didn't know. He thought it was for him. Noah, sweethearty, put the cupcake down. But Margaret was not done. She stepped closer to Noah, her eyes flashing with a venom that made Eleanor's stomach turn. She hissed, pointing a bejeweled finger at the boy. Not to touch things that do not belong to you. Do you understand? This is not your house. You are not a Thornton. You are nothing but a burden, a mistake, and if you ever do this again, I will have you removed from this property permanently. Noah's face crumpled. The cupcake fell from his hand, splattering on the floor. His lower lip trembled, and he began to cry, not a loud angry cry, but a soft confused one. As if he could not understand why he was being punished for something that had felt so good. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice quavering. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. Don't bother, Claire snapped, rolling her eyes. He's not going to understand. He's like an animal. You have to keep him on a leash. Something inside Eleanor snapped. The crack that had rotted in the kitchen had become a chasm, and the woman who had spent years swallowing her anger, who had smiled through every insult and endured every humiliation, was gone. In her place was someone else, someone who was tired, someone who was done. She walked over to Noah, knelt beside him, and pulled him into a tight embrace. You did nothing wrong, she said firmly, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. You saw a cupcake that looked delicious, and you wanted it. That is what children do. That is what normal, healthy children do. She shot a look at Margaret, her eyes blazing. You, on the other hand, cruel woman who takes pleasure in humiliating a 7-year-old boy because he is different from you. You are not a matriarch, you are a bully. Margaret recoiled as if she had been slapped. How dare you speak to me that way in my own house? I have tolerated you, Eleanor. I have tolerated your sister and her burden. I have given you a home, a name, a future, and this is how you repay me, by defending a child who has no future, who will never be anything. Say that again, Eleanor said, her voice dropping to a deadly calm. Say that my nephew has no future. Say it one more time. Margaret hesitated for the first time. She looked uncertain, but Claire, ever the loyal attack dog, stepped forward. You harder, the boy is a liability. He's not going to charvar. He's not going to do anything. He's just going to be a drain on the system, on our family. And your daughter isn't much better. I heard she can barely read, she's 4, and she can't even. Your mouth. Eleanor's voice was a whip crack, and Claire fell silent, her eyes wide with shock. Eleanor turned to face her fully. My daughter is 4 years old. She reads at a first grade level. She is SME-AR, and she has more humanity in her little finger than you have in your entire body. And Noah, he is the sweetest, most loving child I have ever known. He has more empathy in his heart than you could ever dream of possessing. You think you are better than them because you have money and a last name. You are not, you are small, you are pathetic, and I am done pretending otherwise. She stood up, pulling Noah's hand into hers. She looked directly at Margaret, her gaze steady, her voice cold. I am going to take Noah back to his mother, and then I am taking Lily and I am leaving. I don't need your money, I don't need your house. And I certainly don't need your permission to be worthy of respect. We are done. She led Noah out of the parlor, his hand trembling in hers. As she walked through the kitchen, she saw Lily standing by the door, her eyes wide with fear. She had heard everything. Her little face was pale, and there was a deep, ancient sadness in her eyes that no 4-year-old should ever have. Mummy, are we leaving? Lily asked. Yes, Eleanor said, her voice softening as she knelt to her daughter's level. We're leaving, and we are never coming back. She gathered her daughter into her arms, her son in her hair, and she walked out of the grand house, past the GA, past the oblivious guests, past the perfect manicured lawns and the pristine hydrangeas. She walked all the way to her car, her beat-up sedan that the Thorntons had always sneered at, and she buckled both children into the back seat. As she started the engine, She glanced in the rear view mirror at the magnificent estate shrinking behind her. She did not feel regret. She did not feel fear. She felt something she had not felt in years. She felt free. But as she pulled out onto the main road, her phone buzzed. A text from a number she did not recognize. She opened it, and her breath caught in her throat. It was a photograph of a document. A document that bore her name and the signature of her husband, Alexander Thornton. It was a medical authorization form, granting the family access to Lily's records, and it was dated just 2 days ago. Attached to the photograph was a message. He's planning to take her. You need to leave now. Eleanor's hands shook on the steering wheel. Her husband, the man she had left 6 months ago, the man who had never shown a moment of interest in his own daughter, was trying to take her. He was going to use the system, the courts, the money, all of it. He was going to try to make her look unstable, unfit. He was going to try to destroy her the way he had tried to destroy everything else. She looked at Lily in the back seat, at her beautiful, innocent face, at Noah, who was clutching a stuffed bunny and humming to himself. She had no money, no support, no plan. But she had something they did not have. She had the truth. And she had a fire in her belly that would not be extinguished. She put the car in jar and drove, not toward the city, not toward safety. She drove toward the one place she knew held the answers she needed, the Thornton family's private law firm. It was time to stop running. It was time to go on the offensive. As the estate disappeared from her rear view mirror, Eleanor made a silent vow. She would not let them win. She would not let her daughter become another victim of the Thornton legacy. She would burn the whole house down if she had to, and she would stay tonight. The Thornton family's private law firm occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming glass tower in Midtown Manhattan. A monument to the kind of wealth that bought not just justice, but the very definition of it. Eleanor had been here once before, 6 years, when she had signed the prenuptial agreement that had stripped her of any claim to Alexander's fortune. She had been 22, naive, and desperately in love, or at least she had convinced herself she was. She had signed without reading the fine print, without a lawyer of her own, because Alexander had told her it was just a formality, a protection for his family's legacy. She had believed him. She did not believe him anymore. She parked her car in a garage 3 blocks away, leaving Noah and Lily with Amelia, who had arrived at the appartement in a panic after Eleanor's call. Amelia had promised to keep them safe, to stay hidden, to not answer the door for anyone. Eleanor had hugged her sister tightly, whispered a promise that she would fix everything. And then she had walked out into the cold, indifference, her heels clicking on the pavement like a drumbeat of dewy air. The lobby of the tower was all marble and chrome, the kind of place where silence was enforced by the sheer weight of opulence. Eleanor walked to the reception desk, her head held high, her expression calm. She had changed into a sharp black blazer and tailored trousers before leaving, a uniform of power she had bought with the last of her savings. She looked like she belonged. She looked like she was someone to be reckoned with. I'm here to see Mr. Whitmore, she said, her voice steady. Eleanor Vance, he's expecting me. The receptionist, a young woman with a perfect smile and empty eyes, glanced at her screen and frowned. I don't see an appointment, Mrs. Vance. Are you sure? Tell him it's about the Danforth matter, Eleanor said, leaning forward slightly. Tell him I have information that will affect his client's interests. He'll see me. It was a bluff, a gamble. The Danforth family were the donors whose Cupcake had been the catalyst for the afternoon's explosion. They were major investors in Thornton Industries, and their goodwill was essential to Alexander's survival. If Eleanor could make Whitmore believe she had leverage over that relationship, she could get him to the table. The receptionist hesitated, then picked up the phone. She spoke in low, hushed tones, and after a moment, she looked up at Eleanor with a slightly different expression. Less dismissive, more guru. Mr. Whitmore will see you. Take the elevator to the 38th floor. Someone will meet you. The elevator ride was silent. The kind of silence that felt like a held breath. Eleanor watched the numbers climb, her reflection staring back at her from the polished brass doors. She really recognized the woman in the glass. This was not the meek, compliant Eleanor who had spent years shrinking herself to fit into the Thornton world. This was someone a rodder sharper, someone who had been forged in the fire of her own despair. The doors opened onto a sprawling office suite, all DRK wood and leather-bound books, the kind of space designed to intimidate. A man in his late 50s, silver-haired and impeccably dressed, rose from behind a massive desk as she entered. His eyes were cold and assessing, the eyes of a man who had made a career out of seeing people's weaknesses and exploiting them. Mrs. Vance, his voice smooth as aged whiskey, this is an unexpected visit, I must confess. I was under the impression that you had severed all ties with the Thornton family, she said, taking a seat across from him without waiting for an invitation. But I still have ties to my daughter, and your client, my husband, is trying to take her from me. Whitmore's expression did not change. Alexander has expressed concerns about your stability. Yes, he is seeking full custody. I advised him it would be a difficult case, given the lack of documented evidence, but he is persistent. Fathers do not often win custody battles, Mrs. Vance, but when they do, it is usually because the mother has made significant errors in judgment. I would caution you to tread carefully. Eleanor leaned forward, placing her hands flat on the desk. I didn't come here for legal advice, Whitmore, I came here to offer you a choice. You have been Alexander's lawyer for 20 years. You know his secrets. You know what he did to his first wife. You know about the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the fraud. And I know that you know. Whitmore's eyes flickered. It was a tiny movement, almost imperceptible, but Eleanor caught it. I have no idea what you're talking about, he said, his voice still smooth, but there was a slight edge now, a crack in the veneer. Of course you don't, she said, smiling a thin cold smile. But the district attorney might. I've already submitted a package of evidence to the DA's office. I have emails, bank statements, and sworn affidavits from former employees who were pressured to falsify records. I have enough to bring down the entire Thornton empire. And I haven't even mentioned the Danforth situation yet. Whitmore's face went pale. You're bluffing, am I? She pulled a folded document from her blazer pocket and slid it across the desk. It was a copy of a letter from the Danforth family's legal team. A letter that had been accidentally left in the parlor by one of the guests. It detailed a series of irregularities in the Thornton accounts that had raised concerns. It was not a smoking gun, not on its own, but combined with everything else, it was enough to make Whitmore very, very nervous. He read the letter, his jaw tightening. When he looked up, the cold confidence was gone, replaced by something deeper. What do you want, Mrs. Vance? I want you to withdraw as Alexander's counsel, she said. I want you to send him a letter informing him that you can no longer represent him, due to an irreconcilable conflict of interest. I want you to make him panic. I want him to feel alone, vulnerable, and desperate. And I want you to give me access to his files. All of them. Whitmore laughed, a short, bitter sound. You're asking me to betray my client, to ruin my own. Why would I ever do that? Because if you don't, I will make sure the DA knows that you were complicit in the fraud, she said, her voice flat. I have an email chain between you and Alexander discussing how to structure the payments to the Cayman accounts. You advised him you knew, and you did nothing. That's accessory after the fact, Mr. Whitmore. You could go to prison. His face had gone from pale to gray. He stared red at her, his mouth slightly open, and for the first time, she saw fear in his eyes, not the fear of a man caught in a lie, but the fear of a man who realized he had underestimated his opponent. You're not the same woman who walked into this building 6 years ago, he said quietly. She agreed, I'm not. That woman was a fool. She believed in love and trust and second chances. That woman is dead. You are dealing with the woman who rose from her ashes, and I promise you, Mr. Whitmore, I will burn this whole city down before I let anyone take my daughter. She stood up, smoothing her blazer. You have 48 hours to make your decision. I'll be in touch. She turned and walked toward the door, her heart pounding in her chest. She had done it. She had walked into the lion's den and read the beast in the eye. But she knew the doer was just beginning. She stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. As the door slid closed, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her hands were trembling, but her mind was clear. She had the upper hand now. Whitmore was a coward, and cowards always chose self-preservation over loyalty. He would fold. But Alexander was not a coward. He was a predator, and predators did not surrender. He would retaliate. He would come for her, and he would come for Lily. She needed to be ready. She pulled out her phone and dialed Claire's number. She said. She's scared. But I need you to find me something else, something bigger. Something I can use to take Alexander down for good. What kind of something? Claire asked. Eleanor looked out the elevator's glass wall at the city sprawled beneath her, a jungle of steel and glass and secrets. I need to know what happened to his first wife, she said. I need to know why she really left. And I need to know why he's been paying her a monthly stipend for the last 10 years, even though she's supposed to be dead. The elevator doors opened. Eleanor stepped out into the memorable lobby, her heels clicking on the floor like a drumbeat of doer. She had just thrown the first stone, But the avalanche was yet to come. The address Claire sent her was a rundown Abbé Rotmont building in a forgotten corner of Queens. A place where the sidewalks were cracked and the streetlights flickered with a dying breath. Eleanor had driven there in a daze, her mind churning through the implications of what she had just learned. Alexander's first wife, a woman named Rebecca, had supposedly died in a car accident 10 years ago. There had been a funeral, a closed casket, a perfunctory obituary in the society pages. But the payments Claire had uncovered told a different story. Monthly transfers consistent as clockwork. From a Thornton controlled account to a name that didn't match any known employee or vendor. Eleanor had traced the paper trail herself, sitting in Claire's cramped office until 3 in the morning. And what she had found had made her blood run cold. Rebecca was alive, and she was living in Queens, hidden in plain sight. Eleanor parked her car and sat for a long moment. Stia rang at the building. It was a grim, grey structure, its brick facade stained with decades of city grime. The windows were grimy, the fire escape rusted. This was where Alexander had put his first wife, not a grave but a prison. And the monthly payments were not alimony, they were hush money. Rebecca was the skeleton in the Thornton closet. The secret Alexander had buried so deep he had probably convinced himself it didn't exist. Eleanor got out of the car and walked to the entrance. The door was unlocked, the lobby smelling of mildew and stale COO King. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, her footsteps echoing in the Nena Row hallway. Appartement Sembi she knocked, her heart pounding. The door opened a crack, and a woman's face appeared red in the gap. She was older than Eleanor had expected, her face lined with weariness, her hair a brittle, mousy brown, but her eyes were sharp, the eyes of someone who had ran to expect the worst from the world. The woman asked, her voice as if she hadn't spoken to anyone in days. My name is Eleanor Vance, Eleanor said softly. I'm Alexander Thornton's wife, his current wife. And I think you know why I'm here. The woman's face went pale. For a moment, Eleanor thought she would slam the door shut, but instead she opened it wider, stepping back to let Eleanor inside. The apartment was small and cluttered, filled with stacks of books and papers, the remnants of a life lived in hiding. A half-eaten meal sat on a table by the window, and the television was on, the sound muted. How did you find me? The woman asked, her voice trembling. He told me no one would ever find me. He said if I stayed quiet, he would take Siri of me. He said if I tried to leave, he willed. I know what he said. Eleanor interrupted gently. I know what he's capable of. I came here because I need your help. And I think you need mine. Rebecca read at her for a long moment, her eyes searching Eleanor's face. Then she sank into a worn armchair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. You don't understand. He's not just my ex-husband, he's a monster. He made me sign a document that said I was unfit. He threatened to have me committed if I ever spoke out. He told everyone I was dead, I had to vanish. I had to become no one. Eleanor sat down across from her, her hair aching for the woman she really knew. I'm going to help you, she said. But I need you to tell me everything. I need to know what he did to you. And I need to know if you have any proof. Rebecca laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. I've had proof for 10 years. I've been waiting for someone to come looking. I thought maybe one day, someone would figure it out, but no one ever did. They all believed him. They all believed I was dead. She stood up and walked to a closet, pulling out a dusty Serre-Board box. She set it on the table and opened it, revealing a treasure trove of documents, photographs, letters, bank statements, and a marriage certificate that had been annulled, in red ink. Never divorced me, Rebecca said, her voice cracking. He had the marriage annulled. He said it was because I was mentally incompetent. At the time of the wedding, he had a doctor sign an affidavit saying I was incapable of consenting. It was a lie, all of it. But he had money, and he had power, and I had nothing. Eleanor picked up a photograph from the box. It showed a younger Rebecca smiling, her arm linked with a young Alexander. They were at a beach, the sun setting behind them. They looked happy, they looked in love. It was hard to reconcile that image with the broken woman sitting in front of her now. Where did the annulment happen? Eleanor asked, her mind racing. Which court? A private arbitration, Rebecca said. He had his lawyers handle it. There was no public record. It was all sealed. He made sure of it. Eleanor's a sealed annulment meant that, legally, Alexander's marriage to Rebecca had never existed. That meant their marriage, Eleanor's marriage, was legally valid. But it also meant that Alexander had gotten away with something far more sinister. He had erased Rebecca from existence, branded her insane, and hidden her away like a dirty secret. And now he was trying to do the same thing to Eleanor, but in a different way. He wasn't trying to hide her. He was trying to paint her as an unfit mother, as an unstable woman, as someone who was incapable of caring for her child. It was the same playbook, the same pattern of abuse, and Eleanor was determined not to let him succeed. I need you to come with me, Eleanor said, her voice firm. I need you to make a sworn statement. I need you to tell the world what he did to you. And I need you to do it before he takes my daughter. Rebecca's eyes widened with fear. I can't. If he finds out I'm talking, he already knows, Eleanor said, not entirely sure if it was true, but willing to say whatever it took. The private investigator I've been working with has already started digging. He knows someone is asking questions. It's only a matter of time before he comes looking for you, but if you come with me, if you testify, we can stop him. We can make him pay for what he did to you, for what he's trying to do to me, to my daughter. Rebecca looked at the box of documents, then back at Eleanor. Something shifted in her gaze, a flicker of the woman she used to be, the woman who had not yet been beaten down by years of isolation and fear. You really think we can beat him? She asked, her voice really a whisper. I know we can, Eleanor said. He's powerful, but he's arrogant, and arrogant people make mistakes. He made a mistake when he let me find out about you. And he's going to make more mistakes, but I need you to trust me. I need you to come with me now. Rebecca hesitated for a long, agonizing moment, then she nodded slowly, and began to gather her things. She packed the box of documents into a worn duffel bag, and she followed Eleanor out of the appartement, down the stairs into the cold, gray afternoon. As they walked to the car, Rebecca looked back at the building, her face a mask of mixed emotions. I never thought I'd leave that place, she said quietly. I thought I was going to die there, alone, forgotten. You're not forgotten anymore, Eleanor said, opening the car door for her. And you're not alone. We're in this together now. They drove back to the appartement in silence, Eleanor's mind racing with the implications of what she had just done. She had rescued Alexander's first wife from obscurity. And she had brought her back into the light, but that light was dangerous. It was a spotlight that would attract all the wrong attention. And, once he realized what was happening, would not hesitate to strike back. She pulled out her phone and texted Claire. I have her, she's with me. Preparing the media briefing. I want this story out before he has a chance to spin it. Claire's reply came almost immediately. Are you sure about this? This is the kind of thing that gets people hurt. Eleanor looked at Rebecca, who was staring out the window, her face pale but resolute. She thought of Lily, of Noah, of all the children who had been deemed less than by the Thornton family. She thought of the cupcake, the silver star, the words, children with a future, that had shattered the last remnants of her patience. And she felt the fire in her belly burn hotter than ever. I'm sure, she typed back. I've been getting away with this for too long. It's time for the Thornton dynasty to fall. She pirogued the car and led Rebecca up to the apartment, where Amelia was waiting with the children. Lily ran to her, wrapping her small arms around Eleanor's legs. Mommy, I was scared, she said, her voice muffled against Eleanor's trousers. I know, Eleanor said, kneeling to hug her, but I'm here now, and I'm never going to let anyone hurt you again. She looked up at Amelia, who was staring at Rebecca with wide, questioning Amelia. This is Rebecca, Eleanor said, her voice steady. She's Alexander's first wife, and she's going to help us destroy him. Amelia's mouth fell open. His first wife. But Rebecca said, stepping forward. I've been alive for 10 years. And I'm ready to tell the world the truth. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Amelia smiled, a fierce, determined smile that mirrored the one on Eleanor's face. Well then, she said, I guess we have a story to tell. They gathered around the small kitchen table, the four of them, Eleanor, Amelia, Rebecca, and the children, who were playing quietly in the corner with a set of worn building blocks. Eleanor spread the documents from Rebecca's box across the table, her eyes scanning the pages, looking for the one piece of evidence that would tie everything together. And then she found it, a letter, handwritten, from Alexander's father, dated a week before Rebecca's supposed death. It was addressed to Alexander and it read, the girl is a liability, she knows too much, handle it or I will. Eleanor's blood ran cold. She looked up at Rebecca. Did you know about this? Rebecca nodded, tears streaming down her face. His father told him to get rid of me, and Alexander tried. He staged the car accident. He hired a man to run me off the road. But they told everyone I was dead. They made me sign the papers. They told me if I ever tried to contact anyone, they would kill me. They would make it look like an accident. Eleanor felt a cold rage settle into her bones. This was not just a story of a bitter divorce or a custody battle. This was attempted murder. This was a conspiracy. And she had the evidence to prove it. She looked at the letter, then at Rebecca, then at Amelia. "We're not just going to take him down," she said, her voice low and fierce. "We're going to put him in prison. And we're going to do it tonight." She reached for her phone, her hand steady. She dialed the number for the district attorney's office, and waited for the call to connect. Outside the city was de-awakening. The lights of 1,000 windows flickering to life, but inside the small apartment, a new kind of light was shining, the light of justice, the light of revenge. The light of a woman who had finally found her voice, and she was not going to be silenced, not ever again. The district attorney's office moved with a speed that surprised even Eleanor. Within hours of her call, 2 detectives had arrived at the appartement. Their faces grave as they listened to Rebecca's story. They took the handwritten letter, the bank statements, the photographs, and the annulment papers. They took Rebecca's sworn statement, her voice trembling but unwavering as she recounted the night of the staged accident, the months of recovery in a private clinic, the threats that had kept her silent for a decade. By dawn, they had enough for an arrest warrant. Eleanor watched from the window as the detectives drove away, their car disappearing into the gray morning light. She felt hollow, exhausted, but also strangely alive. She had done it. She had set the wheels in motion. But she knew that the arrest pierrot was yet to come. Alexander would not go quietly. He would fight, and he would fight dirty. And he would drag everyone around him into the mud. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. She opened it, her heart already sinking. "Meet me at the old boathouse, come alone. If you bring anyone, Lily pays the price." Her blood turned to ice, she stared at the screen, her hands trembling. It was a threat, aimed at the one thing she could not protect, her daughter. She looked over at Lily, who was sleeping soundly on the pull-out couch, her small face peaceful, her thumb tucked into her mouth. Noah was beside her, his arm flung protectively over his cousin's chest. Amelia was dozing in an armchair. Rebecca curled up on the floor with a blanket. Eleanor's mind raced. The boathouse. It was on the Thornton estate, a crumbling structure by the water that had been abandoned years ago. It was isolated, private, the perfect place for a confrontation, but it was also a trap. Alexander was luring her there, and he was using Lily as bait. She could not ignore the threat, but she could not walk into a trap unprepared. She called Claire, her voice low and urgent. "Or he says he does. He wants me to meet him at the boathouse." Claire's voice was sharp with alarm. "You can't go alone. That's exactly what he wants. He's cornered. Eleanor, he's desperate. Desperate men do desperate things." Eleanor said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "But I can't risk him hurting Lily. I need you to do something for me. I need you to call the detectives. Tell them where I'm going. Tell them to come in force. But tell them to stay out of sight until I give the signal." "What signal?" Claire asked. Eleanor looked at her phone, her thumb hovering over the screen. "I'll figure it out. Just be ready." She dressed quickly, pulling on a pair of dark jeans and a black jacket. She left a note for Amelia, telling her to stay with the children, and not to leave the apartment under any circumstances. Then she slipped out the door, her heart pounding in her ears. The drive to the Thornton estate was a blur of gray streets and overcast sky. The gates were open, as if Alexander was expecting her. She drove down the winding driveway, past the manicured lawns and the pristine hedges, past the main house with its empty. The boathouse was at the end of a dirt path, its wooden frame weathered and rocked by years of salt and wind. She rocked the car and walked toward it, her footsteps crunching on the gravel. The door was ajar. She pushed it open and stepped inside. The interior was dim, the only light coming from a single lantern on a wooden table. Alexander was standing by the water's edge, his back to her, his silhouette sharp against the gray sky. He turned as she entered, a smile playing on his lips that did not reach his eyes. He said, his voice smooth and cold, "I knew you would come. You always were predictable." "Where is Lily?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Alexander laughed, a low, ugly sound. "Lily is fine. She's with her grandmother, being spoiled rotten. I'm not a monster, Eleanor. I just needed to get your attention, to make you listen." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "You threatened my daughter. You texted me a threat. That makes you exactly a monster." "Threatened?" Alexander raised an eyebrow, his expression mockingly innocent. "I don't remember threatening anyone. I simply invited you here for a conversation, a private conversation without lawyers, without investigators, without that little friend of yours, who's been digging through my private affairs." He stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with a cold, predatory light. "You've been busy, Eleanor. I have to give you credit. You found Rebecca. You found the annulment. You found the letter from my father. You've been very, very busy. But you've made a mistake. What mistake? Eleanor asked, her voice steady, though her heart was racing. Alexander's smile widened. You think you can destroy me. You think you can take everything I have, but you forget, Eleanor. I am a Thornton. We don't break, we break other people. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. This is a restraining order. It's been filed with the court. It states that you are a danger to yourself and to your daughter. It states that you have been diagnosed with severe paranoia and delusional disorder. It's signed by a psychiatrist, a very reputable one I might add. By the end of the day, Lily will be in my custody, and you will be in a psychiatric facility, where you belong. Eleanor read at the document, her blood running cold. He had done it again. He had found another doctor, another paid-off another way to paint her as unstable. It was the same playbook he had used with Rebecca. And it was terrifying in its effectiveness. Your psychiatrist is a fraud, she said, her voice really a whisper, just like the last one. Just like all of them. I have evidence. I have Rebecca's testimony. I have the letter from your father. I have everything I need to put you away for the rest of your life. Alexander laughed again, louder this time, the sound echoing off the wooden walls. Evidence, testimony, it doesn't matter. Eleanor, this isn't about evidence. This is about power. And I have all of it. You think the police are coming to save you. You think the DA is going to arrest me. I own the DA, Eleanor. I own half the judges in this city. I own this town. You are nothing. You have always been nothing. And you will always be nothing. He stepped closer, his face inches from hers. I'm going to give you one chance to walk away. Sign this document. It's a confession. It says that you made up all the allegations against me. It says that Rebecca is a liar and a fraud. Sign it, and I'll let you see Lily on weekends. I'll even give you a small allowance. Enough to keep you from starving. Refuse, and I will make your life a living hell. I will take your daughter. I will take your sister's son. I will take everything you've ever loved, and I will destroy it, all of it. And there will be nothing you can do to stop me. Eleanor looked at the document, then at Alexander's cold, triumphant face. She felt the familiar wave of despair wash over her, the instinct to shrink, to comply, to survive. But then she thought of Lily. She thought of the cupcake, of the words, children with a future. She thought of Rebecca, of the years of isolation and fear. She thought of all the women who had been crushed by men like Alexander, who had been told they were nothing, who had believed it. She was not nothing, she had never been nothing, and she was done pretending. She took a step back, her hand reaching into her pocket. She pulled out her phone and pressed a single button, the signal she had arranged with Claire. Then she looked at Alexander, her eyes blazing with a fire he had never seen before. Your problem, Alexander, she said, her voice clear and steady, is that you've never understood what I am. You thought I was weak, you thought I was broken, but I'm not weak, I'm not broken. I am the woman who survived you. I am the woman who survived your mother. I am the woman who survived your entire, rotten, and I am the woman who is going to watch you fall. She held up the phone, showing him the screen. It displayed a live video feed, a news broadcast that was already running. The headline flashed in bold letters. Thornton Hare arrested for fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. Exclusive interview with first wife. Alexander's face went white. What is this? What have you done? I've done what you never thought I would do, Eleanor said, her voice cold and triumphant. I've taken the story public. The whole world is watching, Alexander. They're watching you. And they're seeing exactly who you really are. The sound of sirens filled the air, growing louder by the second. Alexander lunged for her, his face twisted with rage, but Eleanor stepped aside, letting him stumble past her. The doors of the boathouse burst open, and a team of detectives flooded in, their guns drawn, their voices shouting commands. Alexander was tackled to the ground, his arms wrenched behind his back, his face pressed into the dirty floor. Eleanor watched as they handcuffed him, read him his rights, and hauled him to his feet. He looked at her, his eyes burning with hatred, but she met his gaze without flinching. This isn't over, he snarled, struggling against the detective's grip. You think you've won nothing. I will get out, I will find you, I will destroy you. Eleanor smiled, a cold beautiful smile. You had your chance to destroy me, Alexander, and you failed. Now it's my turn, and I promise you, I am just getting started. She watched as they led him away, his shouts fading into the distance. She stood alone in the boathouse, the gray sky reflected in the still water, and she felt a peace she had not felt in years. She had won, she had beaten him, but she knew the war was far from over. There would be lawyers, and appeals, and endless legal battles, but for the first time, she was not afraid. She had faced the monster, and she had survived, and she knew, with absolute certainty, that she would survive whatever came next. Her phone buzzed, a text from Amelia. Lily is safe, she's asking for you. Eleanor smiled, tears streaming down her face. She looked at the boathouse, at the place where she had confronted her demons, and she walked out into the light. She had a daughter to go home to, a family to rebuild, and a future to claim. The Thornton dynasty was crumbling, but Eleanor Vance was rising, and she was never going to stop. The courthouse steps were slick with rain, the gray sky weeping over the city as if mourning the fall of a dynasty. Eleanor stood at the bottom of the marble staircase, her hand clasped tightly around Lily's, her other arm wrapped around a small Sierra Board box. Inside the box was a single cupcake, pink frosting with a silver star, purchased that morning from a bakery across town. It was a small thing, insignificant to anyone else, but to Eleanor, it was a symbol of everything she had fought for. 6 months had passed since the boathouse. 6 months of legal battles, media circuses, and sleepless nights. Alexander was in prison, convicted of fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Rebecca had testified, her voice steady and strong, and her story had captivated the nation. Margaret Thornton had been indicted as an accomplice, her social standing reduced to ash. The Thornton empire, built on generations of lies and cruelty, had crumbled into dust. And Eleanor had walked away with her daughter, Beach, and a future she had carved out of the wreckage with her own 2 hands. But today was not about the past. Today was about a new beginning. She looked up at the courthouse, where the final hearing was about to conclude. The judge had ruled in her favor, granting her full custody of Lily, and a substantial settlement that would ensure they never wanted for anything. The money was irrelevant, really. What mattered was the freedom. The freedom to raise her daughter without fear, without the shadow of the Thornton name hanging over them like a curse. Mummy, are we going home now? Lily asked, her small voice cutting through the noise of the city. Eleanor knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. Yes, baby, we're going home, but first, I want to do something important. She led Lily up the steps and through the heavy oak doors of the courthouse. The hallways were quiet, the bustle of the morning's proceedings already fading. She walked to the courtroom where the hearing had taken place, the room where she had faced Alexander's lawyers, his paid experts, his army of lies. The room where she had stood alone and refused to break. The courtroom was empty now, the benches clay red, the judge's bench vacant, but Eleanor's eyes were not on the bench. They were on a small table near the witness stand. A table where she had placed a photograph of Lily during the proceedings, a reminder of why she was fighting. She walked to the table, set down the box, and opened it. The cupcake was perfect. A small word. She took it out and placed it on the table, next to the photograph. Then she took a step back and looked at Lily, who was watching her with wide, curious eyes. Do you remember the day we left the Thornton estate? Eleanor asked softly. Lily nodded, her face clouding with the memory. I remember the pink cupcake, and Grandma Margaret was mean to Noah. And you said we were never going back. That's right, Eleanor said, her voice thick with emotion. That was the day I decided I would never let anyone make you feel like you weren't enough. Like you didn't deserve the best things in life, and I kept that promise. But I also ran something that day. I ran that the best things in life aren't cupcakes or silver stars or fancy houses. The best things are the people you love, the people who love you back, the people who stand by you when the world is falling apart. She knelt beside Lily, taking her small hands in hers. I want you to understand something, sweetheart. You are not a Thornton, you are a Vance, and being a Vance means you are strong, and you are brave, and you are worthy of every good thing this world has to offer. No one can ever take that away from you. Do you understand? Lily nodded, her eyes shining with tears. Yes, Mommy, I understand. Eleanor smiled, pulling her daughter into a tight embrace. She held her for a long moment, feeling the warmth of her small body, the steady beat of her heart. Then she released her and picked up the cupcake. I bought this for you, she said. It's the pink one with the silver star, the one you wanted that day. I know it's been a long time, and I know it's just a cupcake, but I wanted you to have it. I wanted you to know that you deserve everything you ever wanted. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you get it. Lily's face lit up, a radiant smile that chased away the shadows of the past. She took the cupcake carefully, as if it were made of glass, and she took a small, tentative bite. Then she laughed, a pure, joyful sound that echoed through the empty courtroom. It's gummy, she said, her mouth full of frosting. It's really. Eleanor laughed too, tears streaming down her face. She watched her daughter savor the cupcake, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. In that moment, She realized that this was what victory looked like. Not a courtroom triumph, not a prison sentence, not a fortune in the bank. It looked like a little girl eating a pink cupcake in an empty courtroom, free and happy and loved. The doors to the courtroom opened, and Amelia stepped in, Noah's hand in hers. Noah was holding a stuffed bunny, his face alight with curiosity. "Did we miss the?" he asked, his voice bright. "No, sweetie," Eleanor said, wiping her eyes. "The party is just beginning." Amelia walked over and wrapped her arms around Eleanor, holding her tight. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." "We did it," Eleanor corrected, pulling back to look at her sister. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, without Rebecca, without Claire, without all of us." Rebecca appeared in the doorway, her face transformed by a smile that had been absent for a decade. She was no longer the hollow, haunted woman Eleanor had found in that Queen's apartment. She was vibrant, alive, her eyes bright with hope. "I never thought I'd see the day," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I never thought I'd be free." Eleanor walked over to her and took her hands. "You're free," she said, "and you always will be. We all are." The four of them stood in the empty courtroom. The women who had been broken and rebuilt. The children who had been told they had no future. They had come from different places, different traumas. But they were bound together by a single thread. They had refused to be silenced. Eleanor looked around the room, her eyes lingering on the judge's bench, the witness stand, the table where she had placed the photograph and the cupcake. She thought of the day she had walked out of the Thornton estate, her daughter in her arms, her heart full of fear and anger. She had been running then, but today, she was not running from anything. She was standing in the ruins of her past, and she was not afraid. She walked to the table and picked up the photograph of Lily. It was a simple snapshot, taken on a sunny day in the PA. Lily was laughing, her face turned to the sky, her arms outstretched as if she were about to take flight. Eleanor had ride that photograph with her through every courtroom battle, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. It had been her talisman, her reminder of why she was fighting. She looked at Lily, who was finishing the last bite of the cupcake, her face red with pink frosting. She looked at Noah, who was showing his bunny to Rebecca. She looked at Amelia, who was watching the scene with a soft, contented, and she felt a peace she had never thought possible. She said, her voice steady and, "Let's go home." They walked out of the courtroom together. A small, unlikely family forged in the fires of adversity. The rain had stopped, and the sun was breaking through the clouds, casting a golden light over the city. Eleanor paused at the top of the marble steps, looking out at the world that lay before her. It was a world full of possibilities, a world she had fought for and won. She thought of the cupcake, the silver star, the words, "Children with a future." She thought of the woman who had said those words, Margie Reddy, who was now sitting in a cell, her power and her cruelty finally rendered meaningless. Eleanor did not feel satisfaction at Margie Reddy's fall. She felt something more profound. She felt a quiet, unshakable certainty that she had done the right thing. She had broken the cycle. She had given her daughter a chance to grow up without fear, without shame, without the weight of a legacy that had been built on other people's pain. As they reached the bottom of the steps, Lily tugged on her hand. "Mummy, look," she said, pointing at the sky. A rainbow was arosing across the gray clouds, a vivid stripe of color against the monochrome cityscape. Eleanor's, her heart swelling with a joy that was pure and untainted. "It's beautiful," she said. "It's a promise," Lily said, her voice full of childish certainty. "My teacher said rainbows are promises. They mean everything is going to be okay." Eleanor knelt beside her daughter, her eyes meeting Lily's. "Your teacher is right," she said softly. "It is a promise, and I promise you, Lily, everything is going to be okay. I will make sure of it." She stood up, took her daughter's hand, and walked forward into the light. Behind her, the courthouse loomed, a monument to the justice she had fought for. But ahead of her was the future, wide open and full of hope. She did not look back. The Thornton dynasty was a ghost, a faded memory. She was Eleanor Vance, and she was finally, truly, completely free. And as she walked into the sun-drenched streets of the city, she smiled. She had her daughter, her family, and her freedom. And that was more than enough. It was everything.